My name is Stan Pinnell. I'm a senior account executive here at Revelwood, and I'm joined by my colleague, Haley, who will be showing you today's overview demo of adaptive planning here in a few minutes. Now, I just want to take a few minutes to give you an idea of what to expect today. First, some background on Revelwood. We are a platinum business partner of Workday, and what that means is that we are part of an extremely select group of partners that help you evaluate and implement adaptive planning. We have over 25 plus years of experience and are made up of a diverse team of certified experienced consultants that bring decades of financial operations and system know-how. We've implemented over 150 adaptive customers over the past several years, and this total continues to grow. Not only that, but we also help existing adaptive customers with model enhancements, integrations, support services, and one-on-one training. I'm aware that some of you may be here because you have an active initiative to get into a cloud FP&A solution, and some of you may just be here to learn or you're curious. Either way, we greatly appreciate you taking 15 minutes with us in the next few days just to have a quick chat and see what your current challenges are, if you have any feedback or whether there are resources that we can follow up with. An important thing to know is that the demo today is meant to just really give you a glimpse into what adaptive planning can do. We should be finished in 45 minutes. During that time, everyone is on mute. But if you have a question, there is a Q&A button down at the bottom. Please enter it there and we will try to get to it. If not, we will make sure to get back to you via email. I want to take a moment to share a handful of logos we have personally worked with at Revelwood to help implement and ensure a successful onboarding experience of the Workday Adaptive Planning solution. I only have a few slides before we get started with the demo. Adaptive planning is a place where you can do your modeling, reporting, and analytics all in one place. So everything that you need is in one solution, and it will act as your central source of truth, if you will. So typically we're talking with finance teams, and of course, we're pulling in the general ledger data, but Adaptive can connect to really any data source that you need it to, because at the end of the day, data is data, and you'll be able to bring all that data together into one place to model and report on with confidence. And this slide gives you an idea of some of the areas of the business that you can model and plan using Adaptive, as it is not limited to core FP&A. You can model out really any operational area of the business that you want to with Adaptive. So I'm sure you're thinking, this is really awesome stuff, Stan. What separates Adaptive from the rest of the pack? Great question, everyone. Now Adaptive runs on Elastic Hypercube technology, which is a patented Workday technology. And this is a key competitive differentiator. I'm not going to talk about all the technical specifics because it isn't important, but the reason it is key is because it makes the solution scalable and able to have an unlimited number of dimensions and an unlimited number of versions and scenarios. And when your system needs more processing power, the system is intelligent and expands to give it to you. But what is really important is that you have this power without losing ease of use and maintainability. As you will see in the demo today, everything is extremely intuitive with drag and drop functionality so that the end users can own this system without assistance from IT. And that's why Adaptive has almost 6,000 customers globally in all industries. This is way more than any of our competitors in the FP&A solution space. Did you know that Adaptive has a 95% gross retention rate? This speaks to the value of what these customers are getting out of Adaptive across all different types of industries, as you can see here. And this is growing rapidly. As you can see, this is across all industries. Our commitment to innovation and customer success is recognized by the industry. It's a product that gets the highest user ratings and delivers business agility in times of change. And you can expect the software to be easy to use, easy to implement, and maintain as your business scales. Being ranked #1, ease of use, customer experience, satisfaction, usability, and best return on investment. This should make you very excited to see Haley's demo now.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Stan. Hi, everybody. My name is Haley Elliott. I'm a pre-sales solutions consultant here at Revelwood. So I've been working with Adaptive for about 3 years now and actually started on implementation. So I've implemented everything from FP&A to sales and operations, workforce planning. That just means if you have specific questions as we go along, feel free to pop those in the chat. What you're seeing up on the screen now is our agenda for today. But before we get to that, I did want to draw your attention to just a couple of use cases to keep in mind as we're moving through this demonstration. I'll be sure to highlight them as we move along. But these are just some of the reasons that you're probably at the table right now for planning solutions. So changing market conditions, we're going to look at resource management with different projects, how to track against different goals, performance metrics, making sure your different organizational departments are all aligned, and kind of helping finance and accounting actually get a little bit more accurate on billings projections. So again, just a couple of ideas to keep in the back of your mind. But in terms of how we're going to move through the demo today, we're going to start with just some fundamentals. So how do we navigate through the system? What are the core pieces that you need to know to understand everything else? Then we'll move into active dashboards, which is where we'll stay to review our project management, resource management processes. So those planning processes and the models. From there, we'll move into our financial statements. I am going to focus on the P&L today, but just do know that we do typically build out a full 3 financial statement model. So your cash flow, your balance sheet, and your income statement. And then we'll finish up on 2 other types of reporting, our ad hoc and browser reporting and our plugin to Microsoft Office 365 to automate your board or leadership reporting decks. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into Adaptive. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to please pop them in the chat. I'll try to get to as many as I can at the end, but we can also follow up. So hopefully y'all can now see Adaptive. Like I mentioned, we are going to start with just fundamentals. So elements you're going to see on every single screen. The first is the level structure. So your level structure is typically your organizational structure. This might be locations, departments, anything along those lines. And essentially what you'll do is assign each individual who's coming into the system and budgeting to a level or group of levels. And then every dashboard, report, and working screen or sheet is going to be automatically filtered to that individual's level. So just to kind of put that into simpler terms, that's going to be important so that people aren't having to hunt through 16 different spreadsheets to figure out what data they're actually supposed to be changing. It's also going to give you more power over security, so that when people come in and look at the employee roster or a list of all the consultants, they're only seeing the ones in their department or on their team. So that's the level structure. Cool thing about Adaptive too is if you get 2 years down the road after implementation and decide to completely restructure your organization, pretty easy to do that in Adaptive yourself. So think flexibility as well. The other foundational element you're going to see on every screen are versions, which are right up here. So you do get an unlimited number of versions in Adaptive. You can load in as much data as you want. I currently have a client who has 11 terabytes of data in the system. Is that the most common situation? No, but that just gives you the idea of how much data you can actually start to put into the system. And we'll also talk through how we get that data in here. You'll also notice there's a little lock icon on my budget version. That just means this is probably an approved budget that I don't want anyone to be able to come in and change, but I still want them to be able to view it, pull it into reports, or copy it into a 3+9 or something along those lines. So lots of flexibility in terms of versions as well. With that, though, we're going to go ahead and jump into what we're seeing on the screen. So like I mentioned, dashboards in Adaptive are called active dashboards for a couple of reasons. The first of those is that if you want to kind of make your data tell a story, understand where numbers are coming from, like your weighted revenue, I can come in, click on any chart, and I have the option to drill down by all of the dimensions that data is tagged with. Something cool here is that these drill down paths are automatically generated. So if I add a new dimension to my pipeline sheet, which we'll look at in a moment, it'll automatically appear as a drill down option here. That's different for Adaptive as opposed to other platforms where you're going to have to code this in. And I don't think most of us in this room, the virtual room, actually know a coding language or care to learn them. So ease of use. But how this looks is if I want to see, okay, what competition are we facing in August, our upcoming deals, so that I can get a better idea of maybe what I need to train our sales team on to actually make sure we have this revenue come in. So a little bit more on the qualitative analysis part, and you can continue going as far down as you'd like. So what industries are we seeing competitor one pop up in, something along those lines. So that's option one. Option two is that you also have the ability to explore data. And so this is going to open up a cell explorer that gives you a bunch of details around what departments are generating this, if there's any dimensionality associated with it. So we see that this is a Workday vendor. And most importantly, this can actually take you all the way back to the input sheet. So I highlight that because it is very easy and adaptive to get from your outputs to your inputs. For those of you who are in Excel, I often hear clients kind of complaining about, I have 16 workbooks and it's really hard to figure out how they're connected. Here, Explore Cell is going to tell you exactly where this number is coming from. You also have access to an audit trail. And so that's basically just going to tell you who's been making changes to the data, when they made the change, and what the change was. So useful as you start bringing more and more people into the planning process, but still want to have that ability to review. Cool. So the last reason these are called active dashboards is that you can bring your planning models directly onto the dashboards. So in Adaptive, Stan kind of mentioned that Elastic Hypercube technology and the database behind Adaptive. That just means that your models are on the same exact platform and database as your reports, your visuals, that kind of thing. So as I make changes to my models and the data, that's going to automatically update all of my visuals. In this case, I'll go ahead and expand out my pipeline sheet just so we can get an idea of what one model in Adaptive looks like and make a change. So this is called a model sheet in Adaptive. We have a couple different model types to kind of suit different planning processes, but this is basically just a column-based sheet. You drag on whatever columns you want. We use this for everything from prepaid contract tracking to our pipeline to workforce roster, your employee roster, anything like that. And we'll see some different examples. But in this case, if I go ahead and minimize this back out, let's say I know that one of my reps is being a little too ambitious on when they think one of our deals is going to close. I can go ahead and say, hey, actually, this isn't going to close, I think, until the 29th. Go ahead and save that off, and you're actually going to see a little ... pop up over all of my charts. And that's just showing that as soon as I made that change to the data, it is updating all of my charts. So very easy to integrate in your CRM data, and I'll talk about integration in a moment. And then make changes to it. So it's not about bringing static data in and keeping your data static, but actually being able to build on top of it. So that's kind of our pipeline start to our planning process. One thing that I'll kind of dive into now is integration, and then we'll keep moving down tabs. So we have our CRM data down here. And this is just highlighting that Adaptive is data agnostic, and we can import basically any data you can imagine. So anything from CRM data, your GL balances and transactions, your project level detail, hours for your consultants, for utilization. All of that is accomplished right here in the navigation menu. And so typically what we'll see is our native integration platform. So Adaptive does have a native ETL tool. You do not have to use a third-party integration to actually be able to connect Adaptive to your source systems. And basically what we'll do is set up a task that will automatically load whatever data you want on an automated cadence. So maybe that's nightly, maybe that's every 15 minutes, and it maybe takes a minute or two to run. So pretty seamless. You're not having to kick out people out of the system to get your data actually updated. And then you do also have the option to come into any of those tasks and actually just click a run button. So let's say you're in month-end close, or a big op just got put into Salesforce. You can just come in and click a run button on the integration task, and it'll go ahead and update all your data for you. So pretty easy. The other option that you're seeing here is a manual import. And so if I open that up, this is going to be more for any type of data that doesn't necessarily need to be updated quite as often. So maybe you're uploading your consultant list once a month, and all you have to do is tell Adaptive what sheet you want to load into, and it's going to go ahead and generate a template for you to get your data into the system. So bunch of flexibility here. One other thing I didn't mention, and then we'll go ahead and keep moving through our different dashboard tabs and take a look at a couple of different types of models, is that this is my home screen in Adaptive, but it doesn't need to be everybody's home screen. This is meant to be a very user-friendly, kind of specific to how everyone likes to visualize data. So maybe someone else has this set to just a web report, or immediately to a sheet or a working screen because they just like seeing the numbers. So lots of flexibility there as well on an end user by end user basis. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and take us into kind of the next phase of our planning process. So from pipeline, we're going to go ahead and move more into monitoring our active projects. So right now we're looking at everything from our hours forecast by role, and I'll kind of talk through how we're calculating that. But we're also getting into some team lead analysis. So this is going to be more on the qualitative side, but what I can actually do is put conditional formatting on some of these charts to just see at a glance, hey, Alberto Smith's team is understaffed. You can see that little note right there at the top. We need a new headcount, or we need to reassign one of our projects. So I can actually do that right on the dashboard. Again, a lot of times our clients will use these dashboards to actually guide their planning process. And so if I want to fix that, instead of opening a new headcount, we saw some of those teams were actually underassigned. So maybe I take one of Alberto's projects and I actually give it to Joyce instead. I'll go ahead and reassign that to her team. You can also see this is another modeled sheet with all of my different SOWs loaded by task with the hours breakout by role. And then once I minimize this, you see that red is gone. So Alberto's team, perfectly fine now. Joyce's team is a little bit closer to being, probably it will be considered a decent utilization. We'll look at utilization in a moment. But this is just a nice way to kind of highlight how Adaptive enables you to make data-driven decisions, instead of just saying, I feel like giving Alberto 3 more projects. We're actually looking at, no, he can't take any more projects unless we kind of switch around resources or something along those lines. So actually using your data to inform your planning process. So one other point here is just how that hours breakout is actually calculated. So you can see we're taking a task and kind of auto-allocating it across our different roles. Often we'll have different team sizes working on different projects, different roles on different projects, all with their own rates. So we're actually using an assumption sheet for that. So assumptions are our global drivers. So a lot of us are really trying to move more into driver-based planning so we can have consistent plans. This just gives you a centralized location to actually manage those drivers, so that when I make a change in one of these, all I have to do is make a change in one location, and it'll go ahead and update everywhere across the system. So that allocation of hours across roles is actually happening through what we call a cube sheet. the cube sheets are kind of like a pivot table almost that you can actually budget in. I have some dimensions up here or already put on the sheet. I have my actual data in green. So how are my hours actually billed between these different roles by task? And then what I'm actually thinking for our budget, that task allocation will be. So you can make changes here. I could have put this directly on the dashboard, but just kind of showing you one other flavor of sheets in Adaptive where I can actually just completely pivot it by dragging another dimension down to my rows. So we'll get a different view of the sheet here with data at the relevant intersections. So in summary, we're taking our active projects and then using that assumption sheet to allocate hours by role. And that's informing kind of based on what hours we have available per team, which is going to come off of our consultant roster. Have we overassigned anybody? So anywho, that's going to be on the active project side of the house. One other use case I commonly see with this is loading in actual hours by task so that you can start to do analysis on scope creep, places where you can probably expect a change order coming up some point soon, a little bit more qualitative analysis again on the PM side. So this isn't necessarily just for finance. Financial data is really only as good as what the sales reps and the PMs are giving you. So think about this as a way to easily get them in the system as well. Moving on to utilization. So this dashboard is actually going to give us 3 different views of utilization. On the left here, we're seeing it across the entire organization by role. So I can quickly see, hey, our consultants across the board are being generally underutilized based on actuals we have coming in versus our target utilization. So I know kind of which roles I should be targeting, maybe for additional training or something like that. From there, we step down a bit more into teams or, more on the team side of the house by position, where I can actually start to see where I have headcount deltas month over month. One thing to note is I'm currently planning all of this by month. Typically, we'll set up professional services instances by week, so you can get an even more granular view of this. But this is really meant to inform your headcount plan. And then at the very bottom of this, we get our third view of utilization, which is more on the individual utilization side of the house. So I can see some of my consultants are overutilized, probably going to be my managing consultants and that kind of thing. And I can also quickly identify who's an underutilized resource, which again, from the qualitative perspective, not just, oh, we're missing billings, but in this case, we can also see, maybe I need some more training for this individual, or maybe we actually need someone from leadership to come in and support them a little bit. So again, data-driven decisions. But we'll go ahead and take a peek at the consultant roster. So I'll go ahead and expand this out. And this is just one example of how we'll usually do workforce planning in Adaptive. So here is another model sheet. We're planning by individual, and we just have a bunch of columns from taxes, what benefits they're on, and a lot of these are actually going to be drop downs that are referencing some of those assumption sheets. So we have things like tax rates or what the monthly rate for a UK health plan is in our assumption sheet. And based on what option I choose here, it's going to go ahead and pull those rates. So calculations on these sheets always take place in the back end. So if I want to see Tony Wolf's employee burden specifically, I can always come into row details. I'll go ahead and scroll over to our plan period. And what you'll see down here especially is that 2 of his taxes, FICA and SDI, actually cap out before the year's over. And that's just showing one of Adaptive's built-in financial intelligence functionalities. We can do minimums and maximums so that Adaptive knows, hey, Tony's hit his maximum for these 2 taxes. Go ahead and zero that out until the beginning of the next fiscal year. Your fiscal year does not have to be January through December. It could be whatever your organization currently uses, but just highlighting that. This is also where if instead of reassigning projects like I did earlier, I just wanted to add someone else to Alberto's team. Maybe I actually want to add another senior consultant. I could have come here instead and just copied another row, changed whenever I was going to hire him, and just given it new hire. So nice way to kind of just highlight a few different options you have for mitigating the gaps in your headcount plan. So that's going to be more on the utilization side. We're about to go into our P&L, but the last kind of dashboard I wanted to show is very much more on the qualitative analysis side, and that's going to be customer satisfaction. So this is stepping a little bit out of the financial use case just to highlight how you should really be thinking of planning in a professional services instance. When you have unhappy clients or dissatisfied clients, it's going to be harder for your sales team to actually close deals, right? Because they're not going to have references. Reference sites are probably not going to be the friendliest. So this is actually a critical part to actually making sure that your forecast in the long term is going to be sustainable, because you need to be confident you're going to be able to close the deals you have in pipeline. So just quickly, these are just some standard CSAT metrics around net promoter scores. Average scores. You can start to check in on things like delivery timelines. Do we need to make an adjustment to the project close process? By team lead, we're looking at things like who's renewing for advantage services or managed services over time. So thinking recurring revenue and forecasting that out. And then, of course, going more into the SLA things. Are we actually sticking on top of our what we say we're going to do? And then you can still drill down, of course, into, hey, what references or what industries am I getting references by? What's my average customer satisfaction by industry? Is there one that we struggle more with? Our REITs and transportation companies. And then maybe some clients that we might want to reach out to who just weren't super happy with the implementation. Maybe you want to reach out and find out a little bit more detail as to why. So just another example of how you might qualitatively do this. The last thing I'll say on dashboards, and like I said, we'll take a look at some financial statements and reporting, is just building these out is pretty straightforward. If you come into any of your dashboards, you can just click an edit button up top. You drag on whatever charts you're trying to display. And Adaptive will give you access to every data point in the system. So not just your GL accounts, but again, all of your current pipeline projects, your change orders, your personnel data, any data that you've loaded into the system. So again, no coding, drag and drop. Okay. From here, I'm going to go ahead and take us into our financial statements. So again, I'm coming into sheets this time. Sheets are what we've actually been kind of expanding and making changes to directly on the dashboard. Dashboard is just one way to move through sheets. This is another way if you're just kind of already familiar with the instance and know exactly what sheets you want to go into. I might come in and just start opening up things like my P&L. So what we're actually seeing here, again, is green numbers and black numbers. So green numbers are my actual GL balances. Black numbers are my plan data. So that green data is probably being integrated from something like your NetSuite, your Intacct, your MIPs, your Sage, or your SAP, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and take us down to a lower level just so we can see how planning might work directly in a financial statement for things like operating expenses. So a couple of things you're going to notice right away. You'll see little blue carets on a lot of these. That just means it's a calculated field. Calculations in Adaptive are pretty straightforward, pretty similar to Excel syntax. The main difference is that we're using accounts instead of cells. So instead of B6 times C400, I'm actually seeing we're taking our FTE account times a parking reimbursement assumption. So again, thinking about those assumption sheets, if I change this assumption, it'll go ahead and update for this line item. If you wanted to do something more complex, there's also a nice little point and click formula assistant, or you can come up to the context dependent knowledge base And Adaptive's probably going to guess that you need some help either getting data into one of these cells or writing a formula. So kind of like a back pocket IT person. You are also able to leave notes directly on here, which will appear in reports, or you can come into something like maybe our compensation, or we'll actually just stick with parking. If I know for a specific quarter, I want to go ahead and budget 4,500, Adaptive will give me a bunch of different options to break that value back. Maybe I want to break it back seasonally using last year's values. All of these are out of the box financial intelligence, and I can go ahead and do that. A lot of these numbers will also be generated by some of those additional sheets or supporting schedules we've already looked at for things like implementation revenue or our different compensation buckets. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and move more into the reporting side of the house. So we're going to take a look at two different types of reporting in Adaptive. First, the ad hoc reports, and then, like I mentioned, we're going to take a look at our Office Connect plugin. So I'm going to go ahead and get this popped up. There you go. Cool. So reports are all going to be right here. Your entire planning and reporting process is directly available here in your navigation pane. You don't have to go anywhere else in the system or to another platform. So we're going to take a look at functionality, and then I'll show you how these are built out. So this is one example of an expense variance. As I mentioned on the P&L, you can leave notes, and all of those are going to aggregate here at the bottom. You can make those in line if you'd like. Adaptive can also handle multi-currency translation if that's applicable to you at all. You are able to still drill down into any of this data. So if I see something highlighted red directly on a report, maybe I'm finishing up my budget or my budget versus actuals analysis, and I want to check out why my other T&E was so high, I can come in and actually drill all the way back into transactional detail coming in from my ERP. I do not have to go back into my ERP or Ping accounting to figure out where that actual variance is coming from. It's just going to be right here. You can add whatever columns you want here, invoice ID, vendor, project, to get more into that project profitability side of the house, but really nice way to kind of consolidate all of your data in one place. And then you do also have that option to click on any of the accounts and drill down into any dimension you have in the system. I have a lot in here. You absolutely do not have to have this many. This is just highlighting that you also get an unlimited number of dimensions to slice and dice between. But I can go ahead and look at salary and wages by function. And without having to go through the process of building out a new report, just with a click, I'm getting a different view of my salary and wages account. So you can download these as Excel and PDF as well, if you'd like to distribute them that way. Although you do get up to 1,000 view-only users with your Workday Adaptive Planning license or software subscription. So most people should just be able to come in here and drill down themselves. Building these out is also drag and drop. Pretty straightforward, similar to dashboards. You have all of your elements available right over here. And all you have to do is pick what account or dimension you want to bring over onto the report, go ahead and drag it on and rerun the report. So pretty straightforward to build these out. The other report that I typically build out during implementations is our 3 financial statements, what if scenario. So on this report, I have 2 budget versions versus my actuals from last year for my income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. But what's cool is I also have a bunch of financial metrics down at the bottom. So this is really just highlighting, you can kind of mix and match data as you'd like directly on these reports. So the last thing I'll cover today is actually Office Connect. So I mentioned the Office Connect is our plugin to Microsoft Office 365. So that's going to be PowerPoint, Word, and Excel. And this is really meant to automate your more formatted reports. So things that you need to show to the leadership team or the board on a monthly or quarterly basis, that probably takes you forever to build currently. So if I go ahead and highlight linked cells, blue cells are linked directly to Adaptive. So you can go ahead and explore cell, and that will open up that cell explorer that we looked at earlier. So even from my output report, I can drill back into Adaptive. And then green cells are dynamic labels that will refresh every time I refresh this report to reflect the most current date. So you do not have to completely rebuild all of your current reports from scratch when you're trying to make them dynamic with Office Connect. It is drag and drop as well. We keep the interface pretty much the same as what you saw in web reports. And what you can do is just take your adaptive elements and drag them directly onto an existing report. So again, not having to redo all the hard work you've already put in for formatting. I'll just drag them on, and the blue highlights indicating that these are now highlighted or now connected to Adaptive. If you notice, we're looking at a March report. If I want to go ahead and roll this forward for the following month, I can come into Workbook Properties over here, roll my report date forward. And instead of spending hours or a couple of days trying to update this thing, I can just click refresh, and it's going to populate that data down here for the accounts I just dragged on. It'll update my time labels. And if you notice, all of my Excel spark lines are still here. So you still retain Excel formatting as well. You have some ad hoc functionality, being able to expand and collapse different line items for additional analysis. So again, not just a static report. And then if you want to be able to break out a report like this for different business units, different departments, different team leads or projects, you can come into repeating reports. Adaptive has that data already tagged with every element that I just spoke about. And I'll just pick a couple of different departments in this case. So departments 1, 2, and 3 to generate a formatted P&L for, and you'll see those up or down at the bottom. So departments 3, 2, 1, and I still have my total company. So like I mentioned, this also does apply to our PowerPoint as well. So right here, I still have my Office Connect slide, or my Office Connect option at the top, and then the ability to refresh all still. So that's Office Connect in a nutshell. I do see a question in the chat. I think that's going to be more of a follow-up, but yes, we can, as long as the data is in the system, we can generate project level expense reports, just as long as projects are dimensioned in the system. But actually demoing that, I think, would be best suited for a follow-up. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Stan. And we can go ahead and follow up on the other questions in the chat as well.
Okay, so Haley, thank you. Hopefully everyone saw how powerful, flexible, and especially how easy Adaptive is to use with this simple drag and drop functionality. If you need more, we have plenty of resources we can make available to you, such as a one-on-one demonstration that speaks more to your needs. We can also offer up return on investment sessions to quantify the value of this investment, hands-on workshops, and even get your hands on a trial too. Just let us know what makes sense for you when we connect in our follow-up meeting or reach out to me directly. We are happy to help you. We encourage you to learn more about Revelwood and our implementation approach by visiting our website at revelwood.com. While you are there, we also encourage you to visit our Knowledge Center, where we offer tips and tricks about all aspects of the planning process, technical tips on the tool, planning tips about the budgeting process, and various tips on other business aspects of your FP&A model. Thanks for attending, and one of my colleagues will be reaching out for a 15-minute follow-up call soon. Hopefully you will be able to take the time to share your feedback and let us know how else we can help. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.